Lewis Hamilton was punished for going just 1/10 of a kilometer per hour over the pit lane limit, and that microscopic mistake erased fourth place at the Hungarian Grand Prix. 5 seconds, one lost position, and his fourth penalty across only 3 consecutive race weekends. Then Hamilton delivered the radio message that ignited the entire controversy. Handing out penalties like crazy. Now claims are spreading that he is leading a driver revolt against the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. But no organized revolt has been officially confirmed. What is real is the frustration, the growing criticism, and one brutal question that could force Formula One to reconsider how penalties are applied. When a violation this small can change an entire race result, is the system protecting fairness or destroying it? Subscribe to the channel. To understand why Hamilton's comment became bigger than one penalty, you have to look at the entire weekend. The frustration did not begin in the pit lane. It began one day earlier. Hamilton had qualified second for the Hungarian Grand Prix. That should have placed him on the front row with a clear chance to attack the race from the very beginning. At the Hungaroring, that position is incredibly valuable. The track is narrow. The corners arrive quickly. And once a driver becomes trapped behind another car, overtaking can become painfully difficult. Starting second means clean air. It means strategic freedom. It means the driver can focus on the leaders instead of fighting through traffic. But Hamilton never started there. After qualifying, he received a 3-place grid penalty for obstructing Oscar Piastri at turn 1 during the final part of the session. Second became fifth. The speed that had earned Hamilton a front row place was still real. The opportunity was gone, and that changed every decision Ferrari had to make on Sunday. From fifth, Hamilton faced more cars ahead, more disturbed air, more pressure through the opening corners, and fewer chances to control his own strategy. Think of trying to leave a crowded building. From second in line, the exit feels close. From fifth, every person ahead can slow you down. The distance may look small. The effect can last much longer. That was the first layer of Hamilton's frustration. He had already produced the lap. He had already shown the pace. Then an official decision moved him backward before the race even started. But Hamilton responded in the only way a driver can. He raced. He worked his way forward. He showed competitive speed in the Ferrari. And despite beginning fifth, he recovered to fourth place on the road. That detail matters. This was not a driver complaining after a poor performance. Hamilton had fought back. He had rebuilt the weekend. He had recovered a position and placed himself ahead of Charles Leclerc at the finish. Then came the third pit stop. The virtual safety car was active. That created an opportunity for Ferrari to stop while losing less time than under normal racing conditions. Hamilton entered the pit lane. The limit was 80 kilometers per hour. The official measurement showed 80.1, 1/10 over. That tiny difference produced a 5-second penalty, and those 5 seconds changed everything again. Hamilton crossed the line fourth. The official classification placed him fifth. Leclerc moved ahead. The recovery drive was still there. The pace was still there. But the result beside Hamilton's name no longer reflected where he had finished on the road. That is when the radio message came. Handing out penalties like crazy. The words were frustrated, but they were not a declaration of war. Hamilton did not announce a boycott. He did not claim that several drivers had joined him. He did not call for an organized protest against the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. The source confirms none of that. There is no verified driver revolt, no coordinated statement, no collective action, no confirmed movement involving the rest of the grid. What exists is one real comment from Hamilton, made after another penalty changed his result. And yet, the idea of a revolt spread quickly. Why? Because the comment arrived at exactly the right emotional moment. Hamilton had already lost his front row start. He had fought back during the race. Then 1/10 of a kilometer per hour cost him fourth place. And this became his fourth penalty across 3 consecutive race weekends. One punishment can be dismissed as one mistake. 2 can be treated as a difficult period. For across 3 weekends begins to feel relentless. That does not prove the officials were unfair. It does not prove Hamilton was being targeted. But from inside the cockpit, the pattern would feel impossible to ignore. Every weekend begins with the driver trying to control the car, the tires, and the race. Then another decision changes the result. A grid position disappears. A finishing position disappears. And suddenly, the driver is no longer only racing the cars around him. He is racing the possibility that one more judgment may reshape the weekend. That is the emotional force behind Hamilton's words. Not rebellion, accumulated frustration. And frustration can become powerful even before it becomes organized. One driver speaks. A commentator questions the decision. Fans compare the punishment with the size of the offense. Other teams begin reviewing their own systems. The governing body faces new questions about whether the rules are being applied in a way that feels proportionate. That is how a wider argument can begin, not with a formal revolt, with one case that is too simple to ignore. 80.1 in an 80 km/h zone. 5 seconds. One lost position. The numbers tell the story immediately. Hamilton was above the limit. That part is clear. But the excess was only 1/10. That is where the discomfort begins. Because Formula One relies on hard boundaries. The pit lane speed limit exists for safety. Mechanics work only a short distance from moving cars. Drivers enter and leave narrow working areas. The limit cannot become optional. The governing body needs a clear line. Below it is legal. Above it is not. That makes the rule consistent. It also creates cases where the sporting punishment feels enormous compared with the size of the violation. And Hamilton's penalty became the perfect example. The difference was almost invisible. The consequence was not. Sky Sports Formula One commentator Anthony Davidson questioned the decision, focusing on how small the excess had been. That reaction added weight to the controversy. Not because Davidson can overturn the result. He cannot. It mattered because his criticism captured what many people were already thinking. Should a driver who exceeds the limit by 1/10 receive the same type of immediate penalty as someone who goes significantly faster? Should the size of the violation matter? Or must Formula One protect consistency by treating every breach above the limit in the same strict way? That is the real argument, and it has no easy answer. Imagine a school rule saying every student must arrive before 9 o'clock. One student arrives 1 second late. Another arrives 20 minutes late. Both broke the rule. But should both receive the same punishment? A strict system says yes. The line must mean something. A proportional system says no. The scale of the offense should matter. Formula One faces the same conflict, except the consequences involve championship points, strategy, safety, and millions of pounds. The simple solution would be to create a tolerance. Allow the smallest excess. Ignore 1/10. Punish only larger violations. But the moment a tolerance exists, the tolerance becomes the new target. If 80.1 is accepted, teams will aim for 80.1. Then someone reaches 80.2. And the same argument begins again. The line does not disappear. It only moves. That is why the governing body prefers clear measurements. The number creates certainty. The car was either above the limit or below it. No emotional interpretation is needed. But certainty does not always feel fair. That is what Hamilton's case exposed. The penalty may have been correct under the rule. The result may still feel disproportionate. Both things can be true at the same time. And that is why his radio message became larger than one frustrated sentence. It gave a voice to the conflict. Drivers need rules they can understand. Officials need rules they can enforce. Teams need rules that apply equally. Fans need to believe the punishment fits the offense. Hamilton's case placed all four of those needs against each other. The rule was clear. The measurement was precise. The application was consistent. The outcome still felt severe. That does not create a confirmed revolt, but it creates the conditions where one could eventually grow. A driver does not need to organize a movement for others to recognize the same concern. Another competitor may see Hamilton's penalty and think about his own pit lane settings. Another team may ask whether its safety margin is large enough. Another engineer may decide to lower the target speed slightly. Another driver may become more cautious entering the pits. The official rule remains unchanged. The behavior across the grid begins shifting around it. That may be the first real consequence of Hamilton's penalty. Not a public rebellion, a quiet adjustment. Teams do not wait for controversy to repeat itself. They study what happened. They reduce the risk. They sacrifice a fraction of time to protect themselves from losing 5 seconds later. Ferrari may decide that operating exactly at the limit is too dangerous. Other teams may reach the same conclusion. Their practical target may move lower. 79.9, 79.8, perhaps even lower, depending on how much margin they want. That sounds tiny. In Formula One, tiny changes can decide positions. A slightly slower pit lane entry can place a driver behind another car. That can create traffic. Traffic can damage tire temperatures. The damaged tires can change the strategy. 1/10 can begin a chain that affects the entire race. That is why Hamilton's case matters, even without an organized revolt. It may change how every team manages risk. And once every team begins sacrificing time to avoid a penalty, the question becomes even more uncomfortable. Is the rule producing safer behavior? Or is it forcing teams to compete below the official limit because the punishment for the smallest excess is too severe? Those two outcomes are not the same. A safety rule should reduce danger, but a sporting rule also needs to preserve competition. Formula One constantly lives between those goals. Push too far toward flexibility, and teams exploit every gap. Push too far toward strictness, and tiny technical breaches create major sporting consequences. Hamilton landed directly in the middle of that conflict, and the fact that this was his fourth penalty across 3 weekends made the reaction impossible to separate from the pattern. Again, the pattern does not prove bias. Each incident must be judged individually. But drivers do not experience penalties as isolated legal documents. They experience the cumulative effect. A position lost here, a start compromise there, a result changed again. Eventually, the frustration becomes larger than the latest ruling. That is why the radio message sounded so important. Hamilton was not only reacting to 80.1, he was reacting to the feeling that another weekend had slipped partly out of his control. And this is where the claim of a driver revolt becomes tempting. The phrase creates drama. It suggests meetings behind closed doors, drivers joining together, pressure building against the governing body, a coordinated demand for change. But the source confirms none of those things. There is no organized group, no shared public statement, no evidence that Hamilton is leading other drivers, no confirmed collective campaign against the current penalty rules. The only confirmed driver reaction is Hamilton's own comment. The only confirmed public criticism mentioned is Davidson questioning the sanction. That is not a revolt. It is the beginning of a debate, and the difference matters. A revolt implies action. A debate implies pressure. Hamilton has clearly added pressure.